Hey guys, welcome on back to a Monday edition of the GSMC Football Podcast. I'm your host, as always, Matthew Quinn, and we're brought to you, of course, by the GSMC Sports Network. We have a great show for you today. Today we're going to be covering a number of topics, one of which just recently came into the news, and that is surrounding Tennessee quarterback, or at least former Tennessee quarterback, Nico Iamaleava. And I might be getting that name wrong. I apologize. I'm not great with pronouncing names, but the issues surrounding him and his NIL issues, which are causing him to move on into the transfer portal, so he will no longer be Tennessee's quarterback. We're going to talk a bit about that. We're also going to do a couple of season previews, both in the NFL and, of course, in college football. In the NFL, we're going to do the Chargers and the Broncos, and then we're going to top it off with our college corner, talking about two ACC teams in Florida State and Miami. So make sure you stick around for later in the show, and we'll be diving into that college corner and giving you the previews for both of those teams. So before we start, I would like to ask that you guys like and follow the show as always. If you've got a question during the show or just a message that you just want to, put out there and, have us talk about, then definitely go ahead and hit up our super chat. Your input is a big part of what makes this show great after all, and we thrive on your energy and your insights. Whether it's a quick comment, a thoughtful question, or an opinion that you just want to share, don't hesitate to drop it in the chat. Now, if you want to make absolutely sure that your message sticks out and gets featured on the show, there's an easy way to do that. Use the super chat feature. Just click the $sign at the bottom of the chat box to send in your super chat. This guarantees that your message gets on the air, and it's also a fantastic way to support our channel. We rely on your support to keep bringing you the sports content that you love, and we appreciate every single bit of your support. So go ahead. Let us know what you're thinking. Hit that super chat button, and let's keep the show interactive and exciting. And if you prefer, you can always go to the website at gsmcsports.net to tip, donate, and leave a question or a comment there. We couldn't do what we do without you guys, so we're so thankful to have you guys as part of our community. And once again, the website, if you want to visit that, is gsmcsports.net to tip, donate, or leave a question or a comment right there. So let's go ahead and get into the first part of our show here. We're going to talk a little bit about the Nico Iamaleava issues with his NIL deal, which are basically causing him to no longer be the quarterback for the Tennessee Volunteers this upcoming season. They were looking to have a pretty promising season with Nico there at quarterback. Everything was set up for him to potentially take this coming season and then make it into a potential draft prospect outlook, because he was one of the large class of talented quarterbacks that are coming out this coming off season after the college football season. The whole issue with him is they're, of course, parting ways since they couldn't come to an agreement on an NIL deal. Nico submitted paperwork to enter the transfer portal and is expected to leave Tennessee. And his departure comes after basically an unsuccessful attempt to renegotiate his name, image, and likeness contract, the NIL deals that he has, which led to the school to cut ties with him after the stalemate essentially went public over the weekend, and then he skipped practice on Friday ahead of their spring game. So he was basically trying to get a new deal ahead of that spring game. That was his goal. Just to kind of give you an idea, a little background about him, he's the number 2 recruit coming out of high school, behind only Arch Manning, who is a very highly publicized top quarterback that's supposed to be in college football this coming season for Texas. So Nico reportedly was earning about $2.4 million in the last year of his original $8 million NIL deal. And he was reportedly, one of the players to sign such a deal, and he started receiving payments from that arrangement in high school, and that's according to ESPN. And he was set to begin his third season this coming season with the Volunteers, and this would be his second as their starter. Obviously, that is not going to happen anymore. But since the redshirt sophomore signed with Tennessee, quarterback valuations have risen, and that's kind of part of the whole issue here. with Nico's NIL deal. Just for example, former Georgia quarterback Carson Beck, who is now with Miami, who we're going to talk about later on in the show, he secured an NIL package that paid him about $4 million this year to transfer to Miami. Some other quarterbacks, former Tulane quarterback Darian Mensah, the 112th ranked quarterback in Iamaleava's high school class, actually. He landed a reported 2-year, $8 million deal to transfer to Duke in December. So Nico's idea was that he was going to try and increase his deal to around $4 million, but that was essentially rebuffed by Tennessee. So where he goes right now is really kind of up in the air. He'll have 3 years of eligibility remaining wherever he goes. Now, there are some aspects to that have a little bit of fine print. As long as he avoids the SEC in his transfer portal, he should be able to play this coming season. Now, if he does go to an SEC team, the conference rules restrict those who transfer within the league during the spring transfer window, which, of course, has been open since then, opens on Wednesday. I apologize. If he stays within the conference, he would not be eligible for this coming season. So that would possibly hurt his draft stock. So obviously he wants to try and avoid that. So you would think that he's probably going to go elsewhere outside of the conference, I would imagine, given the ramifications if he was to stay in the SEC. But last year, his first season as a full-time starter, he completed 63% of his passes for just over 2,600 yards and 19 touchdowns. He also had 5 interceptions and added 3 touchdowns on the ground as well. Now, Tennessee has 2 quarterbacks on its roster now and has a commitment from a top-ranked signal caller in next year's recruiting class. So, they're not really in a great spot for quarterback this year now with the whole Nico thing, but they should be set up relatively well going forward in the coming years with their top recruiting class that they have and everything. So, some possible landing spots that he has. Apologize, I'm still trying to fight this cold here. But some possible landing spots that he has is one that I was thinking of was North Carolina head coach Bill Belichick, of course. He is not necessarily happy with his quarterback room as of right now. He doesn't have too many options there. So having Nico come over to Bill Belichick, I think, would do wonders, not only for Nico's career trajectory, of course, being coached by the, of course, greatest NFL coach in, of course, in history. So he's trying to build his name as a college coach now. So having a talented quarterback like Nico in North Carolina would definitely be a win-win for both parties, because Nico would be able to be taught under a very experienced and very successful head coach. And then, of course, North Carolina would get a talented quarterback and have a little bit more answers, in terms of their quarterback questions this coming off season. So that would be an interesting spot for him. Another spot outside of the SEC, of course, because all of these are outside of the SEC. I have Texas Tech, the Red Raiders. They have been the headline makers of this transfer cycle, and they seem to have basically deep pockets, endlessly deep pockets, because they have been, throwing a lot of money around for this transfer cycle. They have a returning starter in Baron Morton, but he probably wouldn't keep Texas Tech from pursuing an upgrade at that position, which Nico would be. So look for them to possibly make a move to try and get him, or if Nico can transfer there, that's a possibility. They're not really up there in terms of being a national champion just yet. They should be an interesting team to watch for sure, but if they do get Nico, they're going to be an even more interesting team to watch. Because there is some hype going around Texas Tech right now because of all the transfer, cycle players that they've brought in, and just their overall preview for this coming season. They look to be a pretty decent team overall. So look out for Texas Tech there. But UCLA is another team that I have on this list of teams that could potentially sign Nico. The Bruins are trying to make waves in the Big Ten since, of course, conference realignment from a year or so ago. And Nico is also from Southern California. So his brother also, Madden, was committed to UCLA at one point during his recruiting process as well. So, a little bit of a reunion there if he was to go to UCLA. But he's a Southern California guy, so that's a possibility for him as well. And UCLA has all of the, money, all of the donors that basically check all of those boxes for NIL for him as well. So there wouldn't be really an issue there. Speaking of California teams, the other team that plays in that same stadium, USC, that's another team to watch out for because obviously Lincoln Riley, the quarterback guru, he is still the coach there at USC, and the Trojans haven't named a starting quarterback yet. We covered them in a few shows ago about USC, and on top of all of that, USC has those resources that would be able to satisfy any kind of NIL price that Nico might have. And if both sides are interested, it seems like pretty much a no-brainer for them to go there. So I think it's a possibility for any one of those teams to sign Nico, but it's going to be interesting to see what he decides to do because he is one of the top prospects coming out of college this coming year. So it'll be interesting to see where he decides to go after this whole mess with the NIL deal kind of went south. So that's everything that I have for this topic. When we come back, though, we're going to dive a little bit into the NFL. We've got two NFL segments today. They're both season previews. We're going to talk about the Chargers next, and then after that, we're going to talk about the Denver Broncos. So stick with us. We're going to take a quick break, and we're going to be right back right after this.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign.
I wanna be the greatest. Everybody on the fake shit. I look around and feel like everybody is the fakest. I make this every day and I'm impatient, hoping one day I blow up from the basement. Statement, the top is so vacant. I don't hear shit that I think is amazing. Waiting for my day when I'm playing sold out shows for 1,000 faces. Hey, give me that crown, get in my way and to be put down. It ain't your place, all this my town. If I want that shit, then I'll get it right now. I'm losing it, the noose it fits. I'm losing shit, a stupid myth. You choose to live or choose to dip. You choose to fight or lose your grip and lose a gift.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind?
All right, guys, welcome back to the show. Before we go ahead and get into our next segment here, when we're talking about a little bit of NFL, before we do that, just want to remind you guys that if you have any questions or any comments or anything that you want to share or contribute to the show, definitely go ahead and do that through our super chat. That's GSMCsports.net. If you want to tip, donate, or just leave a question or comment there, anything that you want to do to get your voice heard, go ahead and hit it in the super chat button. So let's go ahead and get into the next segment of our show here. Best worst case scenario, we're going to be doing the San Diego. You can tell how old I am. The LA Chargers. Obviously, last year they are one of three teams in the AFC West that got to the playoffs. And, of course, they were upended in the first round of the playoffs by the Houston Texans in a game that they were actually favored in. And they finished second in the AFC West overall with an 11-6 record under the first year under Jim Harbaugh there. And like I said, they lost to the Texans in the wild card round. And they did last year have one of the best defenses in the league, of course. They were first in the league throughout the entire course of the season in points allowed. They, didn't really falter from that spot. They were solid all across the board, very consistent throughout the whole course of the season, which is really not too much of a surprise under Jim Harbaugh. When Jim Harbaugh was at Michigan, and then, of course, before that when he was at San Francisco, they always had really good defenses under Jim Harbaugh, so not really much of a surprise there. They already had the talent there, and then, of course, bringing Jim Harbaugh in just accentuated how good their defense could be. They were 8th in the league in interceptions, 7th in the league in sacks. So they were very productive on defense, all across the board. Justin Herbert did deal with a couple injuries early on in the season that kind of stunted his, groove a little bit. But as he got going, when he started to get more healthy, he started to really find his groove and ended up having a pretty solid season overall. 3,800 yards passing, 23 touchdowns, and just threw 3 interceptions. So definitely good statistical numbers there for Justin Herbert. Another bright spot on their offense last year was Ladd McConkey, the rookie wide receiver out of Georgia. He ended up having a tremendous year for a rookie. A tremendous year, really, when you just think just in general receivers. He had 1,100 yards receiving and 7 touchdowns. So definitely there are pieces there on offense to where the Chargers can, make some noise and possibly contend for that AFC West this particular year. But it's going to be a tough division, as it typically always is, but even more so this year with Denver also, expected to make a pretty big jump from their playoff appearance last year. And then, of course, you still have the Chiefs, who are always the Chiefs. But don't forget about the Raiders either. The Raiders are going to be better this year. They should be anyway, with the additions that they have made, as well as additions that will come in the draft in just a couple of weeks. So the Raiders will be tough. So every team in that division is going to be better in some way, except for you could probably maybe make the argument that the Chiefs aren't necessarily better this year, but they still have Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid and Travis Kelce and all those guys. So they're going to be tough to beat regardless. So some of the things that they have done this offseason, one of the more notable departures that they had this year was Joey Bosa. They released him midway through the free agency period, and then the Buffalo Bills ended up snatching him up. So he's playing over in Buffalo now, and they went ahead and they re-signed Khalil Mack as well. They're probably going to try and boost that position a little bit in the NFL draft, I would imagine. They went out and they got their receiver last year with Ladd McConkey, but they could potentially go in the draft somewhere and get a guy. And they could even go and get a tight end as well, because tight ends are a pretty deep class. And, of course, they lost Joshua Palmer to Pittsburgh in the offseason this past offseason. So they're going to want to try and upgrade that position as well. On the running attack, they went ahead and they signed Najee Harris from the Steelers in the offseason during free agency. So that'll shore up their backfield a little bit. So their backfield should be a little bit better. The thing about Najee Harris is you could never say that he was not reliable. He was very durable. Very, very rarely got hurt. Didn't miss any games when he was in Pittsburgh due to injury. Fought through a lot of things. Didn't have the best offensive coordinator in his entire time in Pittsburgh. Also didn't have the best quarterback, or just not the greatest situation overall for Najee Harris. And I expect him to be very successful in LA in his first season, because he finally has a really good quarterback, and he has a decent offense around him, and he has a good coach around him as well. So they should be able to get the most out of Najee Harris. He did have a lot of a workload in his time in Pittsburgh, so that could be a concern, but he's never really had any issues with injuries. And he's also not the type of guy that fumbles very much either, which is a good thing to have if you're a running back, of course. So we'll have to see what he ends up doing, or what the Chargers end up doing with Najee Harris. It'd be interesting to see that. I would imagine they don't run too many options like the Steelers did when they're tossing the ball out to Najee Harris and trying to get him to beat players across the edge, because he doesn't have the speed for that. He's more of a downhill runner, and I'm thinking that he's probably going to get that kind of play, with the Chargers. So we'll have to see overall. But as we continue, best worst case scenario for the Chargers. Best case scenario, I think, is they win the division. That's where I have them overall. Worst case scenario, they finish bottom of the division, and the division is, of course, much improved this offseason. So we'll see how the Chargers end up, at the end of the year when it's all said and done and everything. So I like the Chargers. I think that they could get to 11 wins again. Very, very possible. So it's a good team for the Chargers overall. But we'll have to see what they can do as we go forward here. So Chargers, like I said, best case scenario, they win the division. Worst case scenario, they end up not making the playoffs. I think that's a possibility if they have any issues with injury at all. So that's it for the Chargers. When we come back, we're going to talk about the Broncos a little bit. So stick with us, and we will be right back right after this break.
Looking for your daily fix of sports talk without having to pay for it? GSMC Sports Network is available on YouTube. Just search GSMC Sports Network. Get your fix of daily sports talk shows on YouTube, absolutely free. NFL, college football, NBA, MLB, MMA, UFC, fantasy football, and so much more. GSMC Sports Network has shows running all day long, with new sports shows starting every 2 hours. Just like on your favorite cable sports channel, except GSMC Sports Network is absolutely free. Just search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube to catch one of your new favorite shows, like the GSMC College Football Podcast, Chip Shot Football Podcast, Hoops and Heels Women's Sports Podcast, GSMC Basketball Podcast, and so many more. Check it out for yourself. GSMC Sports Network, now available on YouTube absolutely free. Search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube right now.
All right, guys, welcome back to the show. We're going to get right into the next part of our segment here, and we're going to talk a little bit about the Denver Broncos. We covered the Chargers in the last segment. So here we're going to talk about the Broncos and what they did last year. Of course, finished 10-7, third in the AFC West. That was enough to get them into the wild card position, and they were, pretty much taken care of pretty easily against Buffalo. 31-7, they lost in that wild card game. Started the game pretty well, actually, with a bomb from Bo Nix that got them a 7-0 lead. They weren't really able to do much after that, as of course Buffalo scored 31 unanswered points and ended up winning 31-7. But overall, Broncos had a very good defense last year. They were third in the league in points per game allowed, first in sacks, third in rushing yards allowed per game. And Bo Nix really did improve as the season went along offensively. He had a total of 3,700 yards and 29 touchdowns with just 12 interceptions, which as a rookie with not a ton of weapons to throw to other than Cortland Sutton. That's pretty impressive numbers for Bo Nix overall. He also rushed for 430 yards and 4 touchdowns, and a pretty underrated part of his game is his ability to escape the pocket and his ability to get, outside the pocket and make some plays with his legs. So in the offseason this year, they have done a pretty good job free agency-wise. Brought in some good players like Dre Greenlaw from San Francisco, Talanoa Hufanga also from San Francisco. They went ahead and brought both of those guys in, and they, of course, re-signed DJ Jones on that defensive line. So good move for the Broncos overall in free agency. So their whole goal this offseason is they're going to want to build around Bo Nix and try and build off of that momentum that they got last year by making the playoffs and breaking that playoff streak. It was the first time they made the playoffs since the Peyton Manning years. So they were definitely a much improved team than they were when they had Russell Wilson leading the charge. And then, of course, Sean Payton's first year as the Broncos head coach wasn't great either. But now that they have a whole new system in, he's got his quarterback, and they have actually turned the corner, and they've looked pretty good this past year, and they look to be even better this coming season and should be one of those 3 teams that are competing for the AFC West along with Kansas City, of course. Their biggest thing, like I said, is they need to get some wide receiver help to pair with Cortland Sutton, because Sutton is a solid receiver, solid number 1 guy, but you want to definitely go after somebody in the draft, I would think, because free agency-wise, it's kind of dried up. There's not too many receivers out there unless they're just, depth pieces you want to throw on your roster, but they also could be looking to develop the running back room as well. They lost Javonte Williams to the Cowboys in the offseason. And there was talk that they could draft a running back this upcoming draft because it's a very deep draft class, and the Broncos draft at 20. So you would think that a guy like Ashton Jeanty is probably going to be gone by then, because a lot of talk has been having him going to the Raiders, and we talked about the Raiders, of course, before. So he will probably be gone, but that doesn't necessarily mean there won't be options at running back. There's plenty of really good running backs in this draft class this year. There's Amarian Hampton, of course, from North Carolina. I'm not sure if he'll be available or not. It really just depends on team needs, and, of course, if there's any trades or anything like that. Quinshon Judkins from Ohio State. Travion Henderson, also from Ohio State. Cam Scatterbo, tons of guys out there. I'm just listing a few of them. I'm sure I'm missing a ton of them that are out there, but there's a lot of really good running backs to pick from, essentially. So I think the Broncos will go running back at least at some point in this draft. Whether or not it's the first round or not, we'll have to see. They do also need tight end. So Colston Loveland from Michigan is a possibility there. If they don't want to go running back, because you could probably feel like you'd probably get a running back in the second round or so if you don't get one in the first round. And you can still get a quality running back in the second round as well. So maybe they address a different position in the first round. I remember doing my mock draft several weeks ago. I believe I did have Colston Loveland from Michigan going to Denver at that 20th overall pick. But we will see, because the draft, of course, happens in just a few weeks, of course. So as far as best and worst case scenario for the Broncos, I think the worst case scenario for the Broncos is that Bo Nix takes that sophomore slump that we see in some other quarterbacks, where he had an improved as the season went along. He did improve last year as a rookie, but maybe this year he takes a step back. That's a worst case scenario for the Broncos there, because the success of the Broncos, of course, their defense is very, very good, but it's really going to be wherever Bo Nix can take them, as it normally is with most teams. Quarterback is the straw that stirs the drink, as they say. So if Bo Nix kind of decrease or regresses a little bit in his ability, then that could be a pretty bad situation, especially in a very good division in the AFC West. This is not the year to have a sophomore slump if you're Bo Nix, of course. So so that would be the worst case scenario. I think the Broncos, if Bo Nix just really shows that maybe the rookie year was just kind of a one-off thing, and maybe he won't get to that level again. That would be the worst case scenario. But I don't personally believe that will happen, because I do think Bo Nix is a solid quarterback. I don't think he's, the second coming of Patrick Mahomes or Tom Brady or anything like that. But, I think he's a solid young guy. He kind of puts me in the mind of, in terms of just maximum ability, I could say he could probably be about as good as Kirk Cousins, in the sense that Kirk Cousins, despite the fact that he's very good at making money, that's a whole other conversation, or maybe his agent is just very good at making money, but either way, Kirk Cousins, he is the type of guy that if you put him around the right situation and the right players and receivers and things like that, he can put up really good numbers for you statistically. But then once you get to the games that really matter, he kind of falls short. So I think Bo Nix that's kind of like his ceiling. And if they get a ton of really good really good players around that team, they really build that team up, he doesn't need to be fantastic. He could absolutely be a Kirk Cousins type, and they could still compete for championships, because they have a championship-level defense already, with the Defensive Player of the Year on that defense as well in Pat Surtain. But they also have a ton of other talent on that defense, not just Pat Surtain. He's just, of course, the best player on that defense. But Nick Bonino is another guy that's really, really good. He was in conversations as like a dark horse for Defensive Player of the Year last year. So it's very possible that the Broncos can really take a step forward with that really good defense that they had last year, and they could really make some noise. Best case scenario for the Broncos would be winning this division. I have them at the same type of best case scenario as the Chargers, because I do believe that there are 3 teams in this division that could realistically win this division. And of course that is the Chiefs being one of them, and then of course the Chargers and the Broncos. I don't think the Raiders are quite there yet. I still think they need some other pieces around them, but I think the Chargers are pretty well built, and I think the Broncos are very well built. I think the Broncos are probably the second best team in that division, behind the Kansas City Chiefs, of course, but it's neck and neck between them and the Chargers, I think, in terms of who the better team is. It's just that the Broncos, I'm a sucker for defense, and not that the Chargers don't have a good defense. The Chargers definitely do. They've got the numbers to support it, but I just think that the Broncos have more playmakers on defense, and they can be more effective than the Chargers defense because they can make plays. They can get turnovers and get sacks and things like that. Nobody was better than the Broncos at getting sacks last year. And they were in the top 10 in terms of turnovers as well. So, they were very, opportunistic as a defense, and that's what you want especially if you got a young quarterback that you're trying to bring along and have him grow as a passer as well. So having a great defense definitely makes a huge difference. So I have the Broncos. Overall, I have the Broncos competing for the AFC West. I think they absolutely can do that, and I think they'll probably get to possibly about an 11, maybe even 12-win season, and a couple of wins within the division. I think they take one from Kansas City, most likely in Denver, because Kansas City is always a pretty tough place to play. I think they sweep the Raiders, and then they split with the other 2 teams in that division, and they finish with a 12 or 11 or 12 win record. That's what I have the Broncos. That may be a little, steep or a little generous, but I really like what they're doing, and I like what they did this offseason in terms of bringing in more talent on that defense especially. But they just need to build the offense a little bit more, and then they'll be right up there competing in the playoffs and things like that. So that's my Broncos preview. So when we come back, we're going to dive into some college football, and we're going to do our 2 college corners to end the show, talking about Florida State and their outlook, and then finishing the show with the U in Miami. So stick with us, and we will be right back right after this break.
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found.
All right, guys, welcome back to the show. We're going to get right into our 4th segment of the day, and we're going to talk about Florida State and their upcoming preview of this upcoming college football season that is in just a few months. Before you know it, we're going to be talking about, first game or week 0, in college football, so it'll be fun. But diving into Florida State here, last year was, you could just say that it was a year to forget for Florida State. Had a abysmal 2-10 season, historically bad year under Mike Norvell. And Mike Norvell wants to quickly turn around this team and kind of turn the page off of that last season, and rightfully so. I mean, they just struggled mightily in just about every single game. They were 0-5 at one point. Didn't look like they were going to win any games at some points. They were not very good at all. But this past offseason, or this current offseason that we are in, they went through some coaching overhaul as well. Former UCF head coach and former offensive guru, Gus Malzahn, he is FSU's new offensive coordinator, and they went ahead and hired Nebraska's Tony White for the defense to help hopefully turn things around for that defense, because they struggled a lot last year as the season went along. But as far as their quarterback situation is concerned, they secured Boston College transfer quarterback Thomas Castellanos from the transfer portal in the offseason. He has previous history with Gus Malzahn when they were at UCF together, so there's already chemistry under center there. And also the Seminoles also acquired the number 7 nationally ranked transfer class this past season. So that should benefit this team that is trying to basically bounce back from a horrible season that they had last year. And they're going to start their new season, that bounce back, against Alabama on August 30th. So, not starting, for the faint of heart. It's a tough game right off the, jump here. So if they're going to want to be a better team or looked at more positively, it's going to go a long way in determining what kind of season they have once they play Alabama. If they can get by that game somehow, then, who knows, maybe Florida State can have a pretty special season. Alabama, of course, not the number 1 team in the SEC anymore, but they're still, a solid team, still very well coached, and, still got a ton of really good recruits coming in Alabama every year. So they're always going to be tough. So it's a home game, though, so maybe, that'll ease some minds of the Seminole spectators anyway. So, like I said, that's going to go a long way in determining how good they can really be. So they enter this spring practice with 32 newcomers overall, 19 transfers and 13 true freshmen. Their transfer class was 5th nationally and is 1st in the ACC. And taking a look at Gus Malzahn, some of his numbers, in the past, his offenses have typically averaged about 450 yards per game in his 19 seasons as an offensive coordinator or a head coach, going into year 20 as a coach this year. So, and of course, White has also produced a top 25 defense in each of the last 4 seasons at 2 different programs, one being Syracuse and then, of course, with Nebraska. And in the last 2 seasons, which is 24 games, his defense held opponents to 20 points or fewer 15 total times. So definitely an improvement defensively if he can get that same mindset and that same production that he got at Syracuse and Nebraska. Then Florida State will be back to being competitive, in a season last year that nobody expected them to be that bad. And, really, maybe they weren't necessarily talent-wise that bad. It just, nothing really seemed to go right for Florida State last year. And as a Gators fan, of course, I love to see it. But, if you're a Seminole fan, that's a year to forget for sure. But, taking some more notes on White, his 2024 defense at Nebraska was 1st in the country since 2021 to not allow a rushing touchdown at home. So very impressive stat there, especially Nebraska playing in the Big Ten. It's not an easy conference, of course. So having Nebraska being able to hold teams like that and hold teams without rushing touchdown just speaks to the defensive line of of course, of White there. But at Tulsa, when we're just kind of bouncing around here, at Tulsa in 2007, the first year Mike Norvell, Gus Malzahn were on the same coaching staff, they produced the only season in NCAA history with a 5,000-yard passer, 3 1,000-yard receivers, and a 1,000-yard rusher. So unprecedented numbers right there. And if they can duplicate that or at least come close to that, then Florida State could have a very dangerous team overall. Norvell was coached in 114 all-conference players and 14 All-Americans and ranks 4th among active head coaches with 4 conference championship game appearances. And Castellanos, who spent his freshman season at UCF under Gus Malzahn, comes to Florida State with a total career numbers of 4,921 total yards of offense in 21 games that he played for Boston College in 2023 and 2024. So they have a lot of the right pieces in place to bounce back and have a much better year than a 2-win season that they had last year. But they also do have a pretty tough schedule. Playing in the ACC, there's several teams that are going to be better. They have that end-of-season game against Florida that should be tough as well. That is going to be in Gainesville, so that'll be tough to win that game. And then, of course, they start with Alabama. That's a tough one. Clemson's going to be better this year as well. So there's going to be a lot of obstacles that they're going to have to overcome to get to where they need to get to. But you have to think that they're going to be better than a 2-win team this coming season. I cannot imagine Florida State coming out and being as bad as they were last year this coming season. And if it does happen, then you got to figure that Mike Norvell is probably not going to be around much longer, especially with him bringing in a whole new coaching staff and to hopefully, turn this misfortune of these past couple of seasons around. Because they came from a couple of years ago when they won the ACC, and then they started last year on a 0-5 record and ended up finishing 2-10. So not really the bounce back or not the continuation of the momentum from that previous season in which they won the ACC. Not what you want to see if you're a Florida State fan, but it's still super early. Of course, we're still in spring ball, so a lot can change between now and then. Guys could enter the transfer portal and things like that. We've seen it with the issue with Tennessee quarterback Nico Iamaleava. So anything could happen. They could, add some more players. Who knows? And, this is going to be a very tough start to the season for Florida State playing against Alabama. But like I said, it's at home. The players and the coaches are going to be hungry and determined to get off to a much better start this coming season. So I would not be surprised if Florida State comes out and they have a really, really good game against Alabama and possibly even beat them. It's very possible because Alabama is not the juggernaut that they once were when they had Nick Saban, and all those guys that just came, coming in every single year and just immediately were All-Americans, just seemingly a revolving door of All-Americans at Alabama, competing for national championships just about every single year. And Florida State wants to get back to that point because Florida State, there was a time there where Florida State were right up there as, the team or one of the teams to beat to get to a national championship. Even in the 90s, they did that too between them and Florida. Those are the two teams, and Miami, of course, who always were right up there, competing for national championships. And Nebraska as well. Nebraska has not gotten quite to that, place ever since the 90s. But in the 90s, a lot of people forget Nebraska were a force to be reckoned with, and they were very, very good. So Florida State were right up in there too, so during that era. So they want to get back to that era, or even get back to the era with Jameis Winston when they won a national title there. They were very good that year as well, and Jameis Winston was outstanding for Florida State in the couple years that he was there. So Florida State should be an interesting year. I could see them, they're going to be better than 2 wins. I can't imagine they go 2-10 again this year, especially with the additions that they have made, especially on the coaching side. But just, overall on the roster, I think they've done a good job trying to turn it over. They lost some talent in the NFL draft, as you typically do every single year. But I think they're going to be better. I think they're going to be probably about a 7-win team. Give or take, depending on what the quarterback situation goes like with Gus Malzahn, with the familiarity that he has with the with the quarterback Castellanos. So we'll see how that all kind of shakes out as the season gets going in the next few months or so. But yeah, so that's what I have Florida State as, probably about a 7-6, and maybe 8-5 sort of team. Not a playoff team, of course, but, should be a competitive team, much better than they were last year, which isn't saying much because 2 wins, you can be better than 2 wins at week 3, so, and still have a pretty bad year overall. But that's what I have for Florida State. When we come back, we're going to end the show talking about Florida State's cross-state rival, the Miami Hurricanes. So stick with us, and we will be right back right after this last break. All right, guys, welcome on back to the final segment of the show. We're going to talk a little bit more ACC football, but we're going to talk about the Miami Hurricanes, the arch rival of the Florida State Seminoles. So Miami, of course, losing their generational talent in Cam Ward, that quarterback. That's their biggest loss, of course. They've lost a number of other guys as well, but that is the biggest loss for the Miami Hurricanes. Cam Ward no longer there. They also lost starting running back Damian Martinez, 2 other starting caliber running backs in Ajay Allen. He transferred to FIU, and Chris Johnson Jr., who transferred to SMU. The top 4 receivers in Xavier Restrepo, Isaiah Horton, both of those guys transferred to Alabama, Jacoby George, and Sam Brown. The top 3 tight ends in Elijah Arroyo, Cam McCormick, and Riley Williams, who transferred to Oregon State, and 2 starting offensive linemen in left guard, Jalen Rivers, and center Zach Carpenter. That's all the guys that left on offense for this team. So that's a lot of guys, a lot of outgoing talent for sure. One of the bigger moves that they've made, or more notable moves that they've made, was transferring quarterback Carson Beck, signing with Miami, coming over from Georgia, of course, and suffering that injury in that SEC championship game. Carson Beck did. Carson Beck was actually one of the guys who was listed to be a potential NFL draft pick this year, but he forewent the NFL draft and decided to come back for another season of college football, but he decided to transfer to Miami. And we talked a little bit about his NIL deal, got him about $4 million to transfer to Miami. So obviously that was probably a good factor into why he decided to do that. Could make more money in that situation. Plus, he can really build his legacy a little bit better in his draft prospect or draft status by going to a team that was in desperate need of a quarterback since Cam Ward left. But he is recovering from that elbow injury. But he is on schedule for his recovery, so he should be good to go by the time we start college football in the fall. So not too many issues there. For the spring, the opportunity to compete for the backup quarterback job is there just because of the whole Carson Beck injury. So he's not throwing as much. So the guys in the quarterback room, redshirt sophomore Emory Williams, redshirt freshman Judd Anderson, and true freshman Luke Nickel. Those are the guys that are going to be battling out for spots in the quarterback room. Williams has the most experience, and he's likely going to be the backup next year. He's going to be the number 2 guy, Emory Williams. Anderson is an interesting prospect because he's a big physical player with a ton of athletic ability, sort of think like a Cam Newton sort of guy. But he's still in his development phase for sure, so he's not all the way there in terms of where you want him to be at the quarterback position. So, we'll see how he develops as we go along and everything. So the other guy in that quarterback room, though, is the guy that you really should look out for. He probably has the highest ceiling, and that is Luke Nickel, of course. He's coming in as the highest rated signee, and he crafted a very elite high school football career, which ended with him winning Georgia's Mr. Football Award, and he also was named a high school football All-American. So definitely a guy that you want to keep an eye on. He's not going to be the starter this year, most likely, but he's definitely going to be a guy that you want to keep a good eye on, because he could be the quarterback of the future for Miami. We'll have to see, of course. At the running back position, Mark Fletcher Jr. goes from the rotational player that he was to the unquestioned starter for Miami this year. He's also going to be pushed by Jordan Lyle. He's a talented sophomore who earned pretty significant snaps last year as a true freshman. And early enrollee Gerard Pringle Jr., who has that speed that you want to see in a running back. He's got blazing home run speed. So that's a guy that's going to be very fun to watch as well. Chris Wheatley-Humphrey is another speedster in the backfield who could cause some problems for defenses, and he could also get some snaps this season as well. So it's a pretty deep running back class. They can get a lot of different types of play styles from their different running backs, and then, of course, they've got the speedsters too, which definitely helps. At the receiver position, gone are Miami's top 4 receivers from 2024, so there is plenty of room for the recruits that Miami has compiled over the last 2 cycles of the transfer portal to earn a spot in the rotation for this coming fall. Liberty and LSU transfer C.J. Daniels will likely sit out the spring so that he can fully recover from the heel injury that has kind of cost him issues when he was at LSU. He'll be a pretty important part of Miami's pass game once he gets involved on the team, once he starts getting healthy and starts to, get some snaps in practice and things like that. But the competition for playing time to watch among the young players in the room will be one of those top battles to watch. Excuse me, I just completely butchered that sentence, but that's going to be one of the top battles to watch for sure. Guys like Ray Joseph, JoJo Trader, Nye Carr, Chance Robinson, Joshua Moore, Dalen Upshaw, and Malachi Toney. All those guys will do their best to show the coaches that they're ready for those roles and ready to step up this upcoming season. So the early reviews on those trio of freshmen, which are Moore, Toney, and Upshaw, they have been very, very positive. They are impressing their coaches so far, so hopefully that continues for Miami as the season gets going. To replace the outgoing trio at tight end of Elijah Arroyo, Cam McCormick, and Riley Williams, Miami added Tulane transfer Alex Ballman and UAB transfer Jack Nickel, who is actually the older brother of the quarterback who has the high ceiling, that is Luke Nickel. So when you add Ballman and Nickel to that undersized playmaker, Elijah Lofton, there's a lot to like at the Miami, at the tight end position for Miami this year. They lost, of course, Elijah Arroyo, who is, going to be very difficult to replace, but they feel like they're in pretty good shape overall at that position. So that'll be another position to watch as spring ball keeps going, and then we work our way to, of course, the regular season that starts in just a few months. So Brock Schott, he also has a great combination of size and skill across multiple areas, but Miami needs to replace 2 outgoing starters, but the talent is already on the roster, so they should be able to handle that for the most part, but we shall see. On the offensive line, 6'9" JUCO standout Markel Bell will move from part-time starter like he was last year to a full-time starter at left tackle this coming season. He started a handful of games when Jalen Rivers was injured last year, and he played in every game rotationally as well. He grew by leaps and bounds through the season and will have a starting spot most likely locked down, you would imagine, barring any kind of injuries or anything like that. Matthew McCoy also, he should have the left guard spot pretty much on lock. He's a bigger, more physical type of player than most of the other options that Miami has, and he also developed pretty well during last season as well. So they do lose several contributors, though, to the defensive line. So that 2 deep, formation that they basically have lost a lot of those guys. Gone are edge rushers Elijah Alston and Tyler Barron. Defensive tackles Simeon Barrow. He was a first-team All-ACC last year. C.J. Clark, Anthony Campbell, and Marley Cook, those are all guys that are gone. That's a lot of snaps that they're going to have to try and overcome or try and replace. So we'll have to see what they do there, but Miami should be able to withstand those losses for the most part. At the edge position, the key this spring is going to be developing the next group of pass rushers on this defense. Leading the way, you got guys like Marquise Lightfoot, who's a talented sophomore. He's got a ton of potential. And Hayden Lowe, who is actually a 5-star recruit. He's been pretty favorably looked upon. He's actually been compared to former first-round pick Kayvon Thibodeau, who, of course, now is with the New York Giants. So that's a good comparison because he's a very good, linebacker, of course, or edge rusher. And he was just as good in college as well as he still currently is in the NFL. He's had some injury issues, but, for the most part, he's still very good. Miami's secondary is really where they need the most improvement. They were absolutely atrocious last year, and that's going to be where most of the work is going to be put in, is trying to address that position. It's the group also with the largest amount of turnovers. So in a way, you could kind of hope that maybe some of the bad habits go out the door with some of the players that are now gone as well. That's only time will tell as far as that is concerned. But at corner, they do have a pretty solid player and Rookie of the Year last year, freshman All-American, O.J. Frederick. He's going to be their starting corner on the one side. They did add a ton of transfers in the secondary. Charles Brantley coming over from Michigan State, Emmanuel Carnley from Arizona, Xavier Lucas from Wisconsin, and Ethan O'Connor from Washington State. All of those guys are joining the roster through the transfer portal this spring. So definitely some depth pieces there and some new bodies there. So hopefully that'll, equate to a better performance or better showing on the field on the back end of that secondary. The leading returner, speaking of the back end, the leading returner at safety is sophomore Zaquan Patterson. Miami would absolutely love for him to take a big step forward in his development and his performance to lock down the starting spot right there, because those are the biggest questions for Miami, is especially on defense. That secondary was not very good last year as well, to put it lightly, so that's going to be the key area. Carson Beck is a solid quarterback on offense, so they should be relatively okay offensively. We're not really ready to say he's going to be as good as how Cam Ward was for Miami, but Carson Beck still has that talent, so that'll be an exciting sort of theme to watch for Miami overall as we get things going here. But that's everything I have for Miami. I have them being a pretty competitive team, but I don't have them doing much, more damage than what FSU did. Maybe an 8-win season, possibly a 9-win season, depending on how that secondary looks. If that secondary's improved, then, maybe they can possibly squeak into the college football playoff. Who knows? But it's going to be a lot of work that needs to be done for that to happen. So that's it for this show. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Again, I apologize. I am still kind of getting over a cold, so I apologize about anything that seemed cold related. But I hope you guys did enjoy the show. Always a joy to bring it to you guys. Thank you guys for tuning in. And, of course, we're always presented by GSMC Sports Network. Your support means a lot to us, so please remember to subscribe to the show and leave a positive review. Really does make a difference. And we also invite you to follow us on all the social medias like Facebook, X, TikTok, and Instagram if you want to get more content and more updates. So thank you once again, and I hope you guys have a wonderful night, and we'll see you guys same place, same time, right here on the GSMC Football Podcast. So I appreciate you guys all for listening, and hope you guys have a great night.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired of shit, and the coffee ain't hit yet, damn, ain't that great.